Or, it's all well and good knowing the most OP champions on the Rift, but behind every broken champion there is a broken build, a broken item, a broken keystone, and that's what we are revealing in today's video. The 3 best builds for each role for patch 11.24. Now the great thing about some of these builds, items, and runes is that multiple champions can abuse them, so there are a few options going around for you to choose from. Now before we get into it, like the video if you're enjoying the daily preseason content, and speaking of that content, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already so you don't miss any of it, and let's get into it. So let's start by talking about the 3 broken builds for top lane in 11.24, and coming in at number 3 we have the Conqueror Keystone setup, and for champions like Darius, Singed, Akali, and other bruisers like Fiora, Riven, the fact that Conqueror the stacking is now lasting 5 seconds, no longer 4 seconds, this is really good for those champions who like to trade. Now for Darius in particular, this synergizes really well with his passive because his passive bleed lasts 5 seconds, and also for Singed. This means that when you're running around with that poison trail going, as long as you can keep it ticking on the enemy champions, you are going to be stacking Conqueror. This is also a really nice substitute keystone because Predator is getting nerfed, so if you are playing a champion like Singed, Conqueror is back on the menu. Now coming in at number 2, there are no surprises here. This is the Divine Sunderer Rush, and for champions like Camille and Jax who really benefit from the Sheen and the Spellblade passive, this item is still going to be absurd. Even though Camille is getting nerfed next patch, her Q isn't getting nerfed, which is where the damage really comes from, and these two are still going to keep one-shotting your backline. But the best top lane setup next patch revolves around rushing Sunfire Aegis, because Frostfire Gauntlet is getting nerfed. So even though it's still costing 2800 gold, which is a lot cheaper than Sunfire Aegis, you are losing the HP scaling in the Snowbind passive and also some of the base damage. So for champions like Mundo, Shen, Ornn, Malphite, these champions who may have gone Frostfire in the past really should be going Sunfire Aegis. This mythic that got buffed, remember, in 11.23, so it's giving you more armor, more magic resist, and also more HP in the mythic passive, is for sure the standout tank mythic in the top lane. And to be honest, champions who do buy this item at the moment have a super high win rate. Now let's head all the way down to the bot lane and talk about the AD carry and support setup for 11.24. Now for AD carries, the third one is Lethal Tempo. So this is the best keystone for champions like Vayne, Caitlyn, Jinx, Ashe, Kog'Maw, champions who like to auto attack and can probably make use of the extra range Tempo is giving you at max stacks. And what's great next patch in 11.24 is that Tempo is getting buffed for ranged champions, so you're getting more attack speed per stack from 5% to 7%, and even though the range is down, this is so worth it because you're actually going to access the range a lot sooner because you have more attack speed, and this is just so worth it. So for those champions who are really good at the moment like Vayne, Jinx, Ashe, next patch is going to be even better with Lethal Tempo as your keystone. Now ahead of this, just like I mentioned in the top lane, Conqueror for AD carries like Samira, like Ezreal, maybe even Draven. Because the stacking is back to 5 seconds, it's super nice for these champions. It's very enticing for some of these marksmen. For Samira and Ezreal in particular, because your Q's cooldown is pretty low, you can actually just keep Conqueror stacking by queuing the enemy champions in the bot lane. Whereas before you'd often run out of your Conqueror stacks and you're nowhere near as strong for the fight. And even a champion like Draven could think about going this instead of Halo Blades. So it's a really nice buff, not just for bruisers in the top lane, but also AD carries in the bot lane. But the number 1 build for AD carries in 11.24, this is the Shield Bow on hit setup. So Shield Bow is your mythic of course, followed by Wit's End and Ginsu's Rage Blade. Now these two items, Wit's End and Ginsu's, give you on hit, attack speed, and for champions like Vayne, Ashe, Kog'Maw, Akshan who have on hit in their kit and can really make use of Shield Bow, because if they do get called out they are going to die, the survivability it gives you, coupled with the DPS from Wit's End and Ginsu's, it's one of the deadliest combinations on the Rift at the moment, and nothing is getting nerfed here. So next patch this is going to be just as strong, so I'd highly recommend continuing to build these. But what about the best support builds for 11.24? Well, coming in at number 3 we have Liandry's Anguish. So if you're playing a support like Bran, Zyra, or Swain and you can rush this mythic item, because champions typically these days have more HP in their kit because Sunfire Aegis is giving more HP. Some of the new mage items like Horizon Focus, Shadow Flame, and even though Frostfire is getting nerfed, it will still be a popular pick in the top lane. So champions just have more HP these days, and because Liandry's Burn works really well against champions with a lot of HP, Bran, Zyra, and Swain are pretty deadly. Also because some of the best supports in the bot lane at the moment as well are Enchantresses, so if we think of Sona, Soraka, Lulu, these champions really hate playing against anyone with a bit of burn damage because their healing is kinda cucked. But if you're more of a hard engaged type support player, well, running Glacial Augment on champions like Leona, Nautilus, Rel, Thresh, the funny thing is, all of these supports I just mentioned in high reloads have a much better win rate when these champions are running Glacial. So whether they were running Aftershock or Guardian beforehand, Glacial is just so impactful because in the bot lane you're always going to have at least 2 people in there. So when you actually land your CC onto one of them, the other champion, whether it's the support or the AD carry, is going to be slowed. So they can't peel as much and they can't escape as much. So often one kill will turn into 2, and for these hard engages is a super effective keystone to run. But perhaps a better keystone to to run is Summon Aerie, and this is the keystone for those enchantresses I mentioned like Sona, Soraka, Janna, Lulu, Morgana, and the reason this is so annoying to play against is just because of the damage that keeps on coming at you. Like if you're an AD carry and a Morgana is constantly throwing out her W at you, it really adds up. Same thing with a Lulu and her Q, Sona with her Q, Soraka with her Q, Janna with her W, it just all adds up over time. So if you want to be as annoying as possible in the bot lane, certainly play one of these champions with Aerie as your keystone. Now let's head to the mid lane and talk about the 3 best builds. Now coming in at number 3, we have the typical shield bow and mortal reminder setup for Yasuo and Yone. And I understand that for Yasuo and Yone, it's a bit of a hard time at the moment, because mages are stronger, especially with Crown and the Shattered Queen, and it just seems harder to make these champions work, especially in the early to mid game. But here's the thing, once you get to shield bow and mortal reminder, it might not be game set and match, but it's darn close. You become extremely hard to kill, and because the DPS you have, it's very hard to deal with even if you are 1 in 10. Also, the fact that Conqueror is buffed, this is certainly another option aside from lethal tempo for Yone and Yasuo, so mid lane is certainly looking more juicy for these 2 win brothers. But beating it to number 2 for the mid lane builds, this is the Nash's Toothbrush, and for champions like Kayle and Katarina, it's still an amazing first item to go. Now whether you follow this up with Rocket Belt or Riftmaker, it doesn't really matter because you have that Nash's Tooth foundation. And for Kayle specifically next patch, because lethal tempo is getting buffed, so like I mentioned for AD carries, it's going from 5% to 7% for ranged champions. This is unreal, and it's just going to make you a much scarier champion, especially once you get to your Nash's Spike, so this is why this has to be on this countdown. But the number 1 setup for mid laners, guys, coming for 1124, this revolves around the new Archangel Staff, which is costing 400 less gold. So after your Mage Mythic, whether you're getting Everfrost, whether you're getting Luden's Tempest, Leandry's, Crown of the Shattered Queen, when you get Archangel Staff into this, and this will turn into a Saracen Brace of course, the fact that it's just 2600 gold now, which is the same as the tier tank item Winter's Approach, it's so nice for champions like Kassadin and Nivea, and you might even see some more control mages like Orianna, Syndra go this item now just because it's so much cheaper. And if we just think about a build like Kassadin's, for example, if you're going Crown, then followed by Archangels and Zhonya's, this build is really cheap. No item costs more than 2800 gold, so to be honest, across the board, you'll be hitting your item spikes a lot sooner than anyone else. It's all thanks to that Archangel Staff buff. But we've got one more role to talk about, and perhaps some of the most broken builds reside in the jungle. So coming in at number 3, we have First Strike, and this in particular is the keystone for Talon. And let me just say that in Korean high elo at the moment, Talons with First Strike, they have close to a 60% win rate. This is not going to change next patch because First Strike is not getting nerfed, nor is Talon, nor his items. So with a Ghostblade Rush followed by Eclipse and then Serpent's Fang, let's say, Talon is a really scary champion with this setup. First Strike as well is awesome because when you jump in, your damage is going to be amplified against these enemy champions, and your combo, to be honest, doesn't really last longer than 3 seconds. So there is definitely some lovely harmony going on here. But beating First Strike Talon to number 2, this is Prowler's Claw, and we're talking champions like Rek'Sai, who has one of the best win rates in the game, and also Blue Kayn. Now remember, in 1123, Prowler's Claw got buffed, so it's costing 100 less gold, but the active, the Sand Swipe, is dealing more damage. And I should also say for Rek'Sai in particular here, the Conqueror of course is getting buffed. Now it's not the biggest deal because yeah, it's not like you need 5 seconds to get a combo off, it's very quick and instant, but still a buff is a buff. But coming in at number 1, even though lethal tempo for melee champions is getting nerfed, so you're getting 2% less attack speed per stack, think about it, you're still getting 13% extra attack speed. So for champions like Master Yi, Xin Zhao, and Jax, it is still going to be beyond busted. Like, I don't know about you guys, but every time I see a Master Yi, Xin Zhao, or Jax, just any strong melee champion with lethal tempo, I know that I can't find them just because of how good this keystone is. So those are the 3 best builds for each role, guys, in 1124. Let me know in the comments if you agree, disagree with any of the setups we mentioned, and as always, make sure to hit that subscribe button on your way out, and also make sure to check out the GameLeap website linked in the description and comment section. We've got so many videos made by challenger players and coaches around the world that talk you through role macro and champion micro. We've even got high elo VOD analyses, so make sure you check it out to get that exclusive access. And until tomorrow's daily upload, this has been the